Hello, welcome back to Quadratic. Today we're kicking off the new year with the Falcon 90, which is a tiny little 90mm quad from GoFly, and these are getting more and more popular, and as components get smaller and we develop better technology, they're getting more and more powerful as well. So these really are sort of the new standard for brilliant quads of this size. So we're going to put it on the bench, take a look, and then we'll give it a flight test and see how it handles. Let's go check it out. So here's the quad, and before I go over it, I'll just do a quick rundown of what is in the box. We've got some nice opaque prop guards, and these are actually kind of flexible. They feel pretty flimsy and as if they'll break on the first crash. So I'm not even going to bother putting these on because I'll just be flying this outside and I won't want to use these. But if you're doing this around sort of a tiny little park or somewhere, or you're going to crash a lot, or you're doing it inside, I'd suggest putting these on. And so you've just got two sets of two in there. We've also got some, I'm not entirely sure what this is for. It looks like maybe to go on the underside of each of these motors. We've got 5 of these little sort of sticky non-slip things cut into a slightly weird shape, and I've had a look around and they don't seem to fit into anything, so my idea is probably they just go onto the bottom of these motors here to stop it slipping about and give it a bit of purchase if you're landing on the ground. We've also got a nice little handy instruction manual, which says, actually in here, it says we should be getting 2 sets of propellers, but I've only got the set that's come on here. I've not got a spare, which is quite annoying. And you'll notice there is a little bit of confusion in here. It says the CP90, but this is actually the CP90 Pro, so it looks to me as if they've just reused their old instruction manual to save printing some stuff off, because you'll notice here it says it's actually got a DSMX receiver in here, built in, DSM2, DSMX compatible, and it's listed on here as well, but this is actually only comes as plug and play, so that makes me think that they've possibly just reused their old instruction manual. So you can't actually bind to anything because it doesn't come with a receiver, so you've got to fit your own into there. But this is still pretty useful. It shows you how to set it up in beta flight, and also where all the connections and ports are on your ESCs and flight controller, and also the video transmitter and all the frequencies and what LEDs account to each of those frequencies. So that's pretty nice, because a lot of these sort of Chinese branded quads just tend to lump you with the quad and just forget about it and not tell you how to set anything up. So that's pretty good, especially if this is sort of one of your first quads. So let's take a look a little bit more in detail. I'll zoom in a little bit here. You'll see we've got this very nice orange plastic casing that looks pretty nice. I'm not actually sure if this is 3D printed. It doesn't look to me like it is. It looks like it could be injection molded plastic. So either way, it still feels a little flimsy, like that could crack quite easily, which is a bit disconcerting. But nevertheless, we've still got these strong carbon fiber base plate, and also most of the top plate is quite thick carbon fiber, as you can see as well. And also at the front and back hits here, you'll be able to see we've got what looks like some little aluminium standoffs just to strengthen the entire thing. So this looks and feels like a very strong quad. Even on this a quad this size, we've got quite a thick base plate, so these arms hopefully aren't going to go and snap off like we get with quite a few other quads. So you'll notice we've got these nice 2-inch gem fan propellers. If I zoom in, you might be able to see. So there we go, we've got these wingtip sort of branded gem fan propellers, and these are 2040, as you can see on there. It's kind of a shame that these didn't come with spares. I don't know if they usually should, so I'd suggest picking up some of those anyway. These blades look pretty nice. I'm hoping they're going to give us quite a bit of thrust, so hopefully that should do. But then again, a quad this size, you can use pretty much any 2-inch propellers that you want on there, so you don't have to stick with these, obviously. Taking a look from the side, you'll see we've got everything exposed, more so on this side. It's a bit easier to get at, and you'll be able to see what we've got. On the bottom here, we've got the ESC. You can see the motors are connected to it, and this is actually obviously a 4-in-1, and it is a 20 amp ESC running BL Heli S, so you'll be able to pass through and change the values and stuff on this if you want in BL Heli Suite. And that's pretty big for a quad this size, 20 amps. It's not the biggest I've seen, but it's better, and we're definitely coming a lot further than the sort of 5, 10 or 12 amp ESCs that we used to get on quads like this. So it's good to see that we're upping the ampere rating on little quads, and this should be able to run 2 to 3S, possibly 4S at a stretch, although it's not recommended on the GoFly website. So obviously do that at your own risk. I'd suggest using something like this. A tiny little 3S battery would be perfect for this, which is what I'm going to use to test this out. You'll see it fits quite nicely. It's not going to sag the quad down. It's going to be small enough that it's going to be able to be nice and sprightly and fly about a bit. I've got, for example, bigger batteries like this, which is actually a 4S, which I might test it on, but this is probably going to be a little bit too heavy for this quad. It might weigh it down a bit too much and not give us enough thrust to fly as gracefully and acro as we like. So something around 350, 400 milliamp hours on a 3S should be fine, and you can find a lot of those online. So going up above the ESC, you'll see we've got the flight controller, and it's probably a little bit easier if I just show you in the manual what this looks like. You'll see it's not the standard sort of 20 by 20 millimeters square that we normally have. It's sort of this elongated rectangle, which looks almost as if it was purpose built for this, actually. So it looks like it fits in there quite nicely. And so obviously this has got USB pass through, so we connect it to Betaflight, which this actually comes flashed with. And this is only an F3, so it's not an F4, it's an Omnibus FC, and like I said, flashed with Betaflight. So this is going to have on-screen display as well, which is a nice touch, and is only 6 degrees of freedom, so it doesn't have sort of the barometer or the compass, but most quads nowadays, especially the smaller quads, tend to not have things like that on it anyway. And so obviously this is going to support your receivers. You might be able to see, if I can zoom in on here, you'll see there we've got the ground, the 5 volt or the 3.3, and the signal. So when you're going to go ahead, and if you're going in S-Bus, you're going to plug in here and just match up onto there, and then possibly find a way, you might have to take this top plate off, find a way to fit the receiver in there, or maybe put it onto the back here somehow. So you're going to want obviously as small a possible receiver as you can, and when you come to attach it up, that's where it's going to go. Looking on the other side, you'll see we've got the boot pins here, so we can solder those together if we want to reboot the device, if we're upgrading it or anything. And other than that, there's nothing of interest on this side. So flicking back to this side and going one layer up, you'll see finally we've got to the VTX, and this is actually switchable between 25 and 100 milliwatts, so it's going to give a bit of a nicer range using 100 milliwatts than it is using 25. But don't forget, if you're in the UK like I am, 25 milliwatts is the standard, and it's illegal to go over that. But for everyone in America, you can be sure to switch to the 100 milliwatts and get a bit more range on this. This is obviously 5.8 gigahertz, and it is 40 channels as well. And like I mentioned earlier, if you just refer to the manual, it tells you all the different combinations of the LEDs on here, and basically what frequency that represents, and it basically tells you how to do it there in the notes. So you're going to use this little button here basically to cycle through the frequencies, or do a longer press to cycle through 25 and 200 milliwatts on the output on there. And so you'll see going up, we've got a RunCam branded camera on here, which is really nice. RunCam are really starting to dominate the market, it seems. Even in sort of Chinese produced quads, they're using their RunCam when everything else is their own components. And so this is the RunCam Nano, which is I think about 650 TVL. So not the greatest, highest TVL, but obviously it's RunCam, so hopefully we're going to be getting a nice image on there. And of course we're going to have our on-screen display pass through onto this as well, so that is going to be pretty good. And that's, as far as I know, NSTC and PAL switchable, so you shouldn't have to worry about which version of that you've got in your goggles. But most goggles now come switchable between those anyway. And so you'll see that's housed nicely in there. Obviously that camera is right at the front, there's no protection surrounding this, so we might be able to get a few scratches on the lens if we crash, which could be annoying. But as far as I've tested, RunCam lenses seem to be really, really good. The cameras are really quite durable and can take quite a beating, so that is going to be good. You'll notice, I didn't mention, the motors are actually, if I zoom in on this, 1104 motors. They're not branded, so that makes me guess that they are sort of GoFly's own brand, and these are obviously 1104, so 7500 kV. So hopefully these are going to provide enough thrust to really get this thing proper zooming about in the air, like a little insect, and proper flying about. And you'll be able to see with this camera angle, it allows for quite a bit of forward tilt, so hopefully this is going to have quite a bit of power in it. As far as I can tell, you'll see we don't have any sort of gradients or lines on here. It doesn't look like we can change the camera angle at all, because it looks like it's held on with this, and then the angle is in place with this screw here. So for now, I'm guessing... Oh no! Okay, that's a total lie. It looks like just by pure brute forcing it, we can change the angle of that. So that is, if we can go that fast, that's going to be insane and really good for that camera angle. So I take that back, we can change it. It's just a bit stiff. So hopefully that should mean that the camera angle is going to stay in place. I'm guessing this one, these two bottom ones might in fact loosen, allowing for you to sort of more freely move that angle and then tighten it back up. And of course, not forgetting, it is an XT30 plug, so we're going to be using the smaller batteries with the XT30 connectors on there rather than the large XT60s, and also allowing for more current to flow through than the XJTs, which are the little red ones. So all in all, this is looking like a good quad. It's nice and compact. We've got the sort of same design that we get on a lot of the larger racing quads coming down into this small quad, which is nice, and I'm really looking forward to testing this out. So I'm going to go ahead, charge my batteries up, whack them in here. I just chucked the battery at the camera and it went on the floor. Whack them in here and then go ahead and record and give this a bit of a flight as well and see how it handles. Okay, so here is some footage, and bear in mind that this is about 4 o'clock, half 4 in the evening, and of course now it's sort of winter. This is near enough sunset, so this is very, very dark outside, yet the camera quality is still good enough to be able to see. You can see most of the branches on the trees and sort of discern things, and of course you've still got those sort of vibrant colours in there, even with such low light. So impressed with Runcam's camera quality on such a small device. This is really quite good for such dark flights. So if you're going to be flying in the winter at sort of afternoon, evening time, no problem there. You will notice I'm seeing a bit of sort of interference on this. I think this was probably my fault on the goggle end, that I was just sort of one frequency band over from the actual one that the camera was transmitting. So you'll see I'm getting a little bit of interference because I'm not at exactly the right frequency. And this was only the 25 milliwatts. I didn't do the 100 milliwatts on this because I'm flying around in England and it's not really advised. But nevertheless, you'll see it's still pretty good camera quality and pretty good reception, even with those sort of caveats in there. And overall, this flies really well. You can see it's nice and sturdy, nice and sort of smooth flying. The PIDs are pretty good out of the box. It did seem to have a little bit of a leftward tilt, so I had to trim that on my receiver. So I'm not sure what that was about because it wasn't really that windy. So that could be something to bear in mind. But of course, PIDs always need a little bit of tuning for your specific quad anyway. They're never brilliant out of the box. But nevertheless, this was quite good. I'm impressed, although you'll notice I'm getting quite a bit of speed. It did feel a little bit lacking on 3S, especially having flown sort of 4S and real powerhouses of quads this size. It did feel a little bit lacking. The crashes that I had, some of them were because I was sort of underestimating the amount of thrust I could get when I whacked it up on full. I was expecting a quicker punch out, so I sort of dipped towards the ground and whack it up again, and then it would not have enough power to fly back up, and it would still sort of carry on towards the ground, and I'd end up hitting it, which was a little bit of a disappointment. But nevertheless, with a full battery, you'll see I'm sort of lagging on this battery a bit. I'm not too sure how accurate that battery monitor is because it seems to sway quite a bit up and down with sort of a volt or so. But nevertheless, with a full battery, this did have sort of a good punch out at the beginning. It's nothing spectacular, it's nothing to shout about, but it is a pretty good all-round quad with a nice bit of power and something that's really easy to fly as well. You can do sort of really easily nice flips and rolls and stuff with this, and of course there is that power there as well when you want to go shooting through the trees. Also, I am super impressed with the fact that this can seriously take a beating. I've crashed a lot of times with this quad trying to get used to it and used to the power on it, and you'll be able to see it is still up and flying. Normally when we get crashes on quads of this size, especially at some of the speeds I was going and directly into trees and just sort of smacking it about, at least one prop will break, if not sort of an arm or the canopy or maybe the top plate. Something is going to break, but absolutely nothing broke on this quad from the multiple crashes I had. Not even one propeller blade, and I am seriously impressed with that because that is really a major selling point for me, because you know, mini quads this size, you're going to crash them quite a lot, especially if you're first learning, and it is such a pain to go and have to replace like propellers, prop arms, top canopies, things like that. But this thing took a pounding and didn't have a scratch on it. So seriously seriously impressed with that. Probably one of the best mini quads I've ever flown for its ability to take a crash. So in all, not the most powerful quad. It's still lacking a little bit. You could try on 4S, but I wouldn't recommend it because I'm not sure it'll be able to take it without overheating. But this can take a beating, and if this is going to be your first quad or first quad of this size, I would seriously recommend it, because this is really entertaining, really fun, and that ability to take a crash just sold it for me. So links in the description if you want to check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.